discussing the Zakin Mamre, the elder who rebelled, with different opinions what he has to do to be liable for death. One was that he has to do an Aveira that you get kares for. On that, we had a very long brisa with a lot of details. Not very long, but a brisa full of details of different cases, and we're trying to figure out now all the cases, where would there be a kares application, to which, if the Zakin Mamre, the elder, would disagree upon, and the matter would be brought to the high court, then they would disagree, and he came back and ruled, according to his own ruling, that he'd be liable for chenek, for strangulation. So the next slew of cases, we're up to hacharamim. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down on Peichas Amar. So hacharamim, different forms of sanctifying your property to the Beis Hamikdash. So now, hacharamim beplukta Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira v'Rabbanon. Haramim is a machlokas, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira and the Rabbanon. What's that machlokas? The Tanan says the Mishnah in Erichin, thank you. Says the Mishnah Erichin, stam haramim. So let's say you didn't specify. You want to designate a certain property of yours in a chayrim vow. It's a certain kind of vow that you want to donate to the temple. But you didn't specify to who it's going, which part of the temple. So now, machlokas is, according to Rabbi Ben Beseira, it goes to the Bedek Habayis, is the upkeep of the temple. It goes to the treasury, and they'll use it for whatever they need to use it for. How do I know? Shinemar, kol chayrim, kodesh kedashim ul Hashem. All chayrim is kodesh kedashim hu. It's holy of holies. It goes to Hashem. So if you didn't specify, we assume that you want to go to the Beis Hamikdash. Chachamim omrim, no. If you didn't specify, it's going to go to the Kohanim. Why would it go to the Kohen? Shinemar, kistei chayrim leKohen tiachuz aso. Another verse says that your field that goes out by Yovel, so it's going to be Kodesh LaHashem, just like your Chayrim field, which ended up going to the Kohen. So the other opinion, the rabbis learned that the regular Chayrim, without specifying, is going to go to the Kohen. So now it makes a big difference, because if it goes to the Holy of Holies, if it goes to the Beis Hamikdash, then there's something called Me'ilah. You're not allowed to misuse it. And if you go and you take that money, the value of your property, and you take its value, and then you go and you marry a lady with it. So, if it's Me'ilah, so then and you do it inadvertently, then she's not married. If it belongs to the Kohen, so then if the Kohen, let's say, takes that money, so then she would be married. Now, once she's married, if she goes and marries somebody else, so then that's going to be a big problem. That's going to be a potential death penalty. So it makes a difference to know, is the property belonging to the Beis Hamikdash or not? The difference would be if you can use that money afterwards to be used for to marry somebody or not. So if it goes to if Stam Cherem is to the Bedek Habayis, then there's Me'ilah. If there's Me'ilah, then you can't marry a lady with it. If there's no Me'ilah, then you could. Right? So, okay. Yeah. Im Kain, according to the opinion that says that regular Chayrim goes to the Kohen, why does it say Im Kain Matam Alomar Kodesh Kadashim Hu Hashem? The verse by Chayrim says that when you give it, it sounds like it goes to the Beis Hamikdash, it goes to the Holy of Holies. It belongs to Hashem. So that opinion must learn, it just means Shechal al Kacheh Kadashim Ve'al Kachim Kalim. It just means not that it if you don't specify if it goes there, it just means that it could go there. It has the ability to become something which belongs to the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore it has the potential to have sanctity to it, but not that it has to have that. Okay, fine. Next category of things that have a potential chiyuv kares. Ve'al kach. Hekdeshos. So regular sanctifying something. Bepluk to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov v'Rabbanan. So now, to redeem something which is holy. So we had way earlier, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, afilu tzinor shel hektish, even a small little fork of hektish needs 10 people. Tzricha asar b'nei adam levdosa. It needs 10 people to redeem it. So it says the word Kohen 10 times in the Parsha. You need 10 Kohanim to remove its sanctity. If you want to remove it onto a coin or something like that, then you're going to need 10 Kohanim to do that. So now, if you redeem it with less than 10 Kohanim, it's still holy. And if it's still holy, and you're going to use that to marry a lady, right? If it's still holy, then there's something called Me'ilah. And Me'ilah means you get benefit from holy things inadvertently. So in that case, to marry a lady with that would not be considered a marriage. Once it's not a marriage, and you marry somebody else, so then it's fine. If it is considered a marriage and you marry somebody else, then it's not fine. So that's another example of a kares or a death penalty consequence from something related to hektish. Okay. Next part of the brayso said a rivos. Rivos is referring to hashka'a sota, the sota waters. Arifas egla, the breaking of the cow's neck. The taharas mitzora, and the purity and purifying of mitzora. So let's go through each one. Hashka'a sota. So by sota, you have to warn the lady, and you have to catch her in seclusion after she was warned. Now, how many people do you need to warn her? Let's see. Rabbi Yeshua, the Tanan, Hamakana li'ishto, one who warns his wife. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Makana al Pishayim, you have to warn in front of two people. Once she's warned, if she's caught secluded, even with one witness, so then she's going to be a sota. Umashka al pi eid echad, or really, she'll be the questionable sota that now needs to go and go through the whole process. Oh, al pi atzma, whether you catch her, someone else catches her, if she's been warned to not be secluded with two people, according to Rabbi Eliezer, even one witness afterwards, catch her in seclusion, that she'll be liable to go through the whole process. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, no. Mekana al pishnayim, umashka al pishnayim. You have to warn her in front of two, and like a regular case, you need two witnesses to catch her in the act. Once you catch her, then she's going to go up and go through the whole process. So now, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua are going to have a dispute about who's considered a sota. Now, the difference is going to be that once she is considered a sota, so then she doesn't get a ksuba. She loses her ksuba. So, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you'll need one person to catch her afterwards. If that happens, so she loses her ksuba. According to Rabbi Yeshua, she would still have her ksuba until she's caught secluded by two witnesses. So now there's really a dispute about does she have a ksuba or not? Does the ksuba money belong to her? Because if she's a lady who's found to be guilty, she loses her ksuba, loses her marriage contract, the money that was promised to her when she entered the marriage. So now, if that money does not belong to her, and someone takes it and marries a woman, fine. But if the money does belong to her, and you unlawfully took it and married a woman with it, that's marrying a lady with stolen money. So that's not considered marriage. So now there's really a dispute behind the scenes over here. By taking this money of the ksuba and marrying a lady with it, are you married or not? If you are married and you go marry somebody else, death penalty. If you're not married and you marry somebody else, you're good to go. So if a zakin ma'amre takes one of these sides incorrectly and comes back to a city and rules according to the opinion that we don't hold like, so then what's going to happen is that there could be a potential death penalty situation here, because if you rule erroneously, so then the money that was now extracted might not be yours, and therefore you take that money and marry a woman with it. So that's not going to be a good kiddushin. Well, according to the other opinion, if you take the money and marry a woman with it, it would be a good kiddushin. And if the guy goes and gets married again or has relations to somebody, then he's going to have the death penalty. So the machlokas by a sota is really a machlokas, do you get a ksuba? Which for our purposes is really a machlokas, are you married with stolen money or not? Yeah. Okay. So that is sota. Now, egla rufa, where you find the corpse, and you don't know, um, you don't know, you find a corpse somewhere, and then you have to go measure. You have to go measure now for what was the closest city, and then the leaders of the city are responsible, et cetera, et cetera. So in that process, you bring a cow and you break its neck. So now, says the Gemara, egla rufa, arifas egla, the breaking of the neck is beplukta Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Akiva. That's also a dispute. Tanan, me'ayin how you moded in. From where would they measure? So Rabbi Eliezer Omer mitiburo. They're measuring the corpse or the cow? The corpse, right? Now imagine there's a bunch of cities, right? A bunch of little cities, right? And you find a corpse. So now the one that's closest to the corpse is going to be deemed responsible for allowing such a thing to happen. So how do you measure? From where do you measure? From his feet? From his head? From his nose? From his navel? Where do you go from? So Rabbi Eliezer Omer mitiburo, from the navel. Rabbi Akiva Omer mechotmo, you measure from the nose. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer mimakom shenasa chalal mitzavaro. Sounds like you measure from somewhere in the neck. From the neck. Okay. So now, so what does that have to do with us? So now, that city that's closest, they're going to go and bring a cow. Now, this cow is prohibited from getting any benefit from once you bring a cow. So if, let's say, now there's a machlokas where you measure from. Sakin Mamre measures from, let's say, he thinks you should measure from the navel. And the Bezdin says no, from the nose. And now they bring this cow, right? Mm-hmm. And they bring a cow and they go through the process. That cow is prohibited for benefit afterwards. And therefore you can't marry a lady with it. So nowadays we don't marry with dead egla rufas, but you can imagine there's no fast cash, no ATM nearby. You'll take the dead cow. So depending on what you hold about where you measure from will determine who's going to bring this cow. And therefore, if they bring the cow, so according to one opinion, it's going to be prohibited. According to other opinions, it's going to be a regular cow because they measured incorrectly. Once that cow is brought and the whole process is done to it, it's prohibited from benefiting, and therefore you can't marry somebody with that cow. So now, if that ends up being a marriage, so then, and the person gets married to somebody else, right? Thinking that maybe he's not married because it was really not the cow that's prohibited, but really he is married, and then he has illicit relations or gets married to somebody else, that's going to be consequence which involves the death penalty. So that's also an example of something which a Sakin Mamre can argue on and will have a consequence in the world of Karis. Oh, the Haras Mitzorah, purifying the Mitzorah. Plug to the Reb Shimon v'Rabbanan. So you have to sprinkle on the right thumb and the right ear and the big toe, the right big toe. So not right versus wrong, but right versus left. Yeah. So what happens if he doesn't have those? The Mitzorah, he's missing. He's missing a right ear. He's missing a right thumb. Missing a right toe. Yeah. So it's pretty bad. Not only do you speak lashon hara, but you're also missing this. Yeah. So you're missing stuff. Not good. So what happens? The tan ein lo bohen yad, bohen regel, ozen yaminas. You don't have the right thumb or the right toe or the right ear. Ein lo tahara olamis. Wow. First opinion, no purity. You are stuck. So if you're missing these, do not speak lashon hara. It's not worth it. So Rabbi Eliezer, you're stuck. No purity forever. Rabbi Eliezer Omer no snin lo al mekomo. So he says, no, you put it on that place. Wherever the thumb would have been or the ear would have been, that's where you put it. V'yotze, and you're good. Rabbi Shimon Omer no snal shal small. You put on the left. Right was ideal, but left was a backup. V'yotze. So now, if you have a dispute in this area, There's going to be a big difference if you are considered pure or impure. What's the difference if you're pure or impure? If you walk into the Beis Hamikdash, if you eat holy food, things that are kodesh, so that can get a person kares. So if a zaken mamre argues on one of these things, and he's told that he's wrong, and he goes and he rules according to his own ruling, so he's doing something which has a consequence that can get a person kares, and therefore back according to Rav Meir, that first opinion, he'll be qualified as zaken mamre. B'sharecha, in your gates, in your cities, refers to leket, shicha, v'peya, the three different parts of your field, parts of your produce that really belong to the poor people. So we're going to go through each one. And the difference is always going to be, give them a chlokus, what leket, what shicha, and what peya is. So if you're wrong, then it does not belong to a poor person. Or maybe it does belong to a poor person, and if someone else takes it, that's considered stealing. And if it's stealing and you marry a woman with stolen money, she's not married. Versus if it's not stolen money, then she is married. So, leket, the Tran, Shnei Shibolin, 2 sheaves, right? I was confused with sheaves and stocks. Okay, yeah. 2 sheaves. Shnei Shibolin, leket. So if you leave the 2 sheaves, that's leket. Shlosh, anyway, if you leave 3 sheaves, that's not leket because we don't assume that that's random anymore. Once 3 sheaves are left, we assume the owner left it there, and therefore that doesn't belong to the poor people. So now, yeah. So now, if he disputes that and he says no, 3 sheaves is considered still belonging to the poor people, well, that makes a big difference now, because if you were to take something which belongs to the poor people, that's stolen money, and therefore you can't marry a lady with it. Versus if you take something which does not belong to the poor people, and that's real money, and then you get married with it and you marry somebody else, then you're potentially going to have a chiyuv kares. Okay. Shicha, when you forget 2 stocks, right? Now it's stocks, yeah? Okay. Shicha, shnei omrin. You take the 2 stocks. So, shnei omrim, shicha. Shlosha eino shicha. People forget 2, they don't forget 3. 3's already, yeah. So at home you could forget 2 times to do things. 3 times you're already liable. Yeah, that's it. So 2 times is shicha, 3 times not shicha. The al kulan for all of these, Beis Shammai says, shalosh la'ani va'arba lebalabayis. 3 still belongs to the poor person. The 4th already, whether it's shicha or whether it's leket, goes to the owner. Meaning that's not random anymore. That's not the poor person's. That belongs to the owner. Now, if they have a dispute in this area, so that the difference is going to be, is it considered stolen or not? Which is then going to play its way out in the area of Kiddushin, marrying a lady. Is she married? Is she not? Which then is going to make a difference if she has, let's say, either illicit relations or she gets married to somebody else. That's also going to carry potentially a kares penalty. Okay, peya. So now the corner of your field. So it was interesting. So there's a whole process, obviously, in how you get from your produce that grows in your field to your wonderful bread at the table, right? So there is now going to be a machlokas. At which point of the process are you still able to take off peya? Let's say you finally got to flour. You got all the way from the kernels and you ground them, and now it's flour. Do you still have a chance to take off peya from your flour? It's no longer in your field anymore, or not? So once again, if you have to, so then it belongs really to the poor people. And therefore, if someone else takes it, it's stolen. And if not, then it belongs to you. And therefore, if you use that money to get married, then it's going to be fine. So peya b'pulkat Rabbi Shmuel v'Rabbanan. So machlokas Rabbi Shmuel and the Rabbanan, the Tan mitzvah's peya. The mitzvah peya is lahafresh min hakama, to leave off the to separate from the standing one. Another one, sheaves, stocks, and standing. Okay, meaning the standing part of the field when the produce is standing. So lo hafresh min hakama, yafresh min ha'omrim. If you don't separate from there, separate from the stalk when it's already a stalk. If you still didn't do that, lo hafresh min ha'omrim, yafresh min ha'kri. Then you take it and after you thresh it, and you put it into a pile. So you still take off from that pile. Until, as long as you didn't smoothen out the pile. That's the next step in the process. Once you mericho, so then once you already smoothen out the pile, then now you no longer have to take peya. Now it's already a certain stage of finished. You take meiser, v'nosel. You have to take off 1/10 of it and give it to him. Mishur maybe Shmuel Amru, no, you still have time. Af mafresh mina isa. Even when it's flour, it's interesting, you could still take off payah. So now the difference is going to be that that when it's flour and you take it to give payah, let's say you take it and give it to your friend. So that's going to be either stealing or not stealing. So, and therefore, once it's already ground and you give it to somebody, so is that considered stolen or really belongs to the poor person? Difference is going to be, can you take that money and now marry a woman with it? If it's stolen money, then you can't marry her. If it's not stolen, then you could. And therefore, if there's a dispute in that area, that is a potential of carrying with it kares. Okay, that concludes the long brisa according to Rav Meir that holds that you have to do something, argue on a point that is chayav kares. We concluded all those many cases. The next part of the Mishnah spoke about the 3 different courts that you go through, procession from one court to the next court up to the high court. So, Shlosha Batei Dinim, Amar Rav Kahana, Hu Omer Mipia Shmuah, Ve'hein Omer Mipia Shmuah. So now, he comes and is disputing a halakhic ruling. So in what way does he dispute it? Let's say he says, for example, I heard that this is the ruling, I heard it from my rabbi. And he heard it from his rabbi, he heard it from his rabbi. Is that a dispute that is going to cause this person to become a zaken mamre? So let's see. So if who only mipia shmua, he says I'm ruling according to what I was taught in yeshiva. The hain omer mipia shmua, and they're ruling according to what they were taught in yeshiva. So ein neraku, that's okay. You can dispute, and if you're someone who's able to answer halakha questions, so then this is what you were taught. So why should you have to bend to their rules? Your rabbi stayed strong in this. Why should you have to give in? So that doesn't make you a zaken mamre if you argue on that. Hu omer kachu be'enai. It seems to me the halacha is like this. The hein omrim kachu be'enin. It seems to us the halacha is like this. Okay, well that's a classic dispute. What'd you do wrong? You didn't question their authority. You're fitting for your opinion. They're fitting for their opinion. However, one second. So the kol shekain, if he says, I heard from my rabbi, and they say we heard, it seems to us that this is the right thing. So then he has a tradition, and they don't have a tradition. They think that this is the right thing to do. The kol shekain hu omer mipia shmua, I say, I learned in yeshiva like this. The hein omer and the court says, this is what we think the halacha is. For sure, we're not going to make him a zaken mamre, because it's only until, according to the first opinion, only until until he says kachu be'enai. It seems to me the halacha is like this. The hein omrim mipia shmua, and they say we have a tradition. That is terrible. We have a tradition about what the halacha is. Rabbis. It's been passed down for generations. You come and you say, to me it seems like this. Yeah, New Judaism. So if you argue on that and then go back and rule accordingly, then you're going to be zaken mamre, because now you're not only putting into question the authority, but you're putting into question the whole tradition that we have, and that's a terrible thing. So, Jared, we're 6 lines from the bottom on 88a. So, so that's that. That's the first opinion. You have to argue on the tradition that we have. This is very pertinent in 2025. New things. Changing. Let's do it. Feels good. People relate to it better. Like, okay, figure out how they can relate to it better. But who said you got to just change things? We've had something going on for many years, especially if there's a tradition and you just want to just feel better about yourself. Like how does that? Right. Giving smicha to people that all of a sudden, there's a million examples, unfortunately. Okay, Tata Shaharei lo hargu. So look, I'll bring you a proof that you have to be somebody who just rules according to your own brain against the court that ruled according to a tradition. I'll bring you a proof. Teda Sharei lo hargu as Akiva ben Mahalal. There's someone, Akiva ben Mahalal, who ruled against the rabbis, and they didn't kill him. So Rashi says it's a Mishnah in Mesechus Edios that there was 4 things that he argued on the great Sanhedrin about, and So 1 second, you're going against the Sanhedrin Gadol. You ruled one way, and the great court ruled a different way, and we didn't kill you. Why didn't we kill you? Because it must be the things you were arguing about wasn't, it was in your eyes, but they had a tradition. It was either you had a tradition, they had a tradition, or you both had different opinions about it. Because if not, then we would have killed them. That's the first opinion. Rabbi Lazar Omer, which is extremely pertinent nowadays, we'll see more about this. Afilu hu omer mipia shmua. Even if he says, I have a tradition going back generations for my ruling, vehein omrim, and the great court, the Sanhedrin says, kachu be'einenu. Right now, we don't have a tradition, but right now, the group of rabbis in the great court up next to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and they say, it seems to us that this is the halacha, even against his tradition, he's still going to be rendered a zaken mamre. Why? Because we should not have machlokas b'Yisrael. Avoid dispute at all costs. So if the great court says something, even if you have a tradition, but if they rule, that's the end. That's the final ruling. And if you put them into question and you rule according to your own ruling, you're going to get strangulation. Just because we want to avoid dispute. So the Im Tomar, well, if that's true, what happened to Kiva ben Mahalo? He disputed the Sanhedrin, and we didn't kill him. Why not? The Im Tomar pnei Malo hargas Kiva ben Mahalo mipnei shelo horu halacha l'maisa. He didn't go back and issue the ruling. He himself thought that that was the halacha. He disputed them in the Beis Medrash. But once he left the Beis Medrash, and someone asked him what the halacha was, he told them the halacha is like the rabbis. Which is very hard, right? Mm-hmm. You spend weeks and weeks and weeks coming out with a certain halakhic ruling, and yet you have to now bend to the greater authority. But the value of not having machlokas. There was somebody in America within the last 20, 30 years who is fitting to be the Rosh Yeshiva of one of the big yeshivas in America. And there was some dispute that broke out, and he literally ran away. He went across the country, went to Lakewood, and just gave a Gemara shir there. Because he says, I have a tradition from my grandfather. He's taking them to dispute, run away. I'm not getting involved. Wow. And he gave up, and he gave up, and he gave up, so it's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So it's just such an ugly thing. So, okay. V'im Tomer, okay, fine. So, Tanan. The Mishnah says, Kach Darashti. So now, the Mishnah said that they have the following conversation. I expounded like this, V'kein Darshu Chaveirai. And my friends expounded like this. I learned the halacha like this. And so did my friends. So says the Gemara, my love, is it not a case where who omer mi pi shmua? He's saying I have a tradition. Beheim omrim kachu beinenu, and they're saying it seems to us that this is the halacha, meaning he has a tradition, and they don't have a tradition, and yet we render mazakin mamre. Says the Gemara, no. Who omer kachu beinai? Beheim omrim mi pi shmua, meaning, according to the first opinion, that the only way to become a zaken mamre is if you rule according to your own intellect against the Sanhedrin that ruled according to their tradition. So the Mishnah seemed to be at odds with that. It seemed to be that it was really him ruling according to his tradition and them ruling according to what they see. Says the Gemara, no. It's really a case where he ruled according to his own intellect and they had a tradition. And therefore, it's not going to be a proof against the Rabbanon. It'll be it won't be a proof to Rabbi Lazar. It'll be a proof to the Rabbanon. Fine. So now, Tashma, the Amar Rabbi Yoshia, Shlosha Dvarim, 3 things, Sach li Zeira, me Anshe Yerushalayim. 3 things, Zeira literally means the little one, small one. Maybe he's very humble. So he told me over from the old Yerushalmis, from the people in Jerusalem, the pious Jews in Jerusalem. What did he tell them? A Baal Shemachal al Kinui Kinui Machal, a husband who warns his wife not to seclude herself. If he then foregoes on the warning, he can take it back. He can, never mind. I trust her. So dinner was good tonight. I trust her. Take it back. So that is considered, you're allowed to forego in that. Turning the page. Ben Sorer Amore, if you're the wayward son, Sheratzu Aviv Imav Limchal, they also, even after they warned him and they gave him lashes, they're allowed to forego on their warning. They can take it back, and it would be considered that they forgoed on it, and therefore, I don't know if that's a word, forgoed, that they it's a word, so that they forgoed on it, and therefore, if he continues to do his actions of a Ben Sormor, he's not going to be killed, because you have to get warned and get lashes, After that happened, they could take it back. They can be mochel. You know what? It's fine. He's doing these bad things. It's fine. Interesting. You could have said, who said it's up to them? Who said it's up to the parents to decide, if they can forgo on their son doing terrible acts. But they can forgo on it, and therefore he's not going to become a ben sorim. Fine. And the last one that we need is zaken mamre. Sheratzu bezdin limcholo mochlilo. If the bezdin wants to forgo on his punishment, they're allowed to. He went against them. Once again, it's a fascinating thing. Who said it's up to them? When you want to be mochel on something, it usually means that it's yours. For instance, a king is not allowed to forgo on his honor. He can't have someone sit in his seat. A parent can allow a kid to sit in their seat. Why? Because he has to respect the parent. The parent can say, that's fine. I forgo on my honor. You can sit in my seat. A king is not his honor. It's Hashem's honor. And the Torah says you can't forgo on it. So it's interesting here that the court that has a dispute with a zaken mamre, they're allowed to forgo on his punishment. You could have thought that zaken mamre is much bigger than just a dispute against the court. Maybe it's somewhere in the realm of Hashem, and therefore you can't forgo on it. Okay, so that's what Zeira told him. However, when I went to my friends in the south, interesting that the Netziv writes, Avram Avinu in the very beginning, you see he's always going to the Negev, hanging on the south. And the menorah was placed in the south, in the base of Mikdash. And the Netziv writes that the south was the area more attuned for Chachma, for wisdom, for knowledge. So interesting. Here also, my friends in the south, just interesting. The south is a place apparently that's more available for Torah wisdom. Either way, my friends in the south. On two of them they agreed, one of them they disagreed. Al shnayim hoduli, al zaken mamre lo hoduli. Oh. For ben sorah or the husband in terms of the sota wife, you could forgo on that, no problem. The zaken mamre says they can't forgo on it, which would mean it's much bigger than the court. And then it says why? Kidei shlo yirba machlokas b'Yisrael. Tiyufta. So those two opinions earlier of what makes someone a zaken mamre, Rabbi Elazar held that anytime you argue with the court, even if you have a tradition and they don't have a tradition, you're still going to be a zaken mamre because we don't want machlokas. Can the court forgo on that or not? Says the Gemara here. Nope. The rabbis in the south, they said that when it came to zaken mamre, it's not up to the court to forgo on this dispute. It's much bigger. We have the whole Jewish people's authority. Our whole tradition is at stake. So therefore, to not increase dispute in the Jewish people, the court has no right to forgo on their honor. Oh, he disputed me. It doesn't matter. When it comes to this is a much more global issue, and therefore there's no forgoing on it. If he argues on you and he rules according to his own opinion, he's going to be rendered as zaken mamre. All to prevent dispute. It's an amazing thing, yeah. So, okay. Yeah, Tanya. Yeah, good. Good. Okay. Tanya says the Brisa, Amr Rabbi Yossi, Mitchila lo hayu marim. Okay, so this is interesting. Yeah, everyone wants to know how Machlokes started. So having the Rambam in his introduction to his commentary on the Mishnah, he really goes through our whole tradition and how Machlokes started. If I remember correctly, I think part of it's based off this Gemara because they sound very similar. So how did Machlokes start? Yeah, we have so many Gemaras, a lot of Machlokes. How did it all start? Mitchila lo hayu marim Machlokes b'Yisrael. In the beginning, there wasn't so many Machlokes in B'Yisrael. It didn't exist. Ella Bezdin shel Shivim ve'echad. You had a court of 71. Yoshim Malicious Lagazis would sit over there in the yeah, basically in the base of Mikdash, chamber of hew and stone. The Shnei Bate Dinim shel Esim v'Shlosha, and then there was two other courts of 23. So Echad Yoshev al Pesach Harabayis, the opening of the Harabayis, they would sit. Echad Yoshev al Pesach Hazara, and one would sit by the opening to the courtyard. And the rest of the courts, and then you had a 23-person court in every city where Jews lived. You had a question, you go to the Bezdin. If they knew, im shamu amru. If they heard you and they had an answer, they told you. Amru lehen. If they didn't know, im lav, bayin lazesh samach leiran. They would go to the nearest court. Im shamu amru. If they knew, they would tell you. Vim lav, bayin lazesh al pesach harbais. If they didn't know, then they would go up to the opening to the Harabayas. Im shamu amru. If they knew, they would tell you. V'im lav bayin lezesh al pesach azara. And if not, then they would go up to the court by the azara. Sounds like that was the right. It was a higher court, not just in locale, but it was in proximity. But it was they knew more. You would ask them. The omer kach. V'im lav bayin lezesh al pesach azara. You'd go to the court that was by the opening of the courtyard. The omer kach darashti v'kach darshu chaveirai. You tell them, this is what I think, this is what my friends think. This is what I learned. This is that my friends learned. So we have a dispute. So im shamu amrulam. If they knew the answer, they would tell you, you're right, no, you're right. V'im lav, and if not, elu, both sides of the dispute would come. L'lishas hagazes to the great Sanhedrin up there by the Beis Hamikdash. Shesham yoshin, they would be sitting there. Mi tamid shel shachar ad tamid shel ben arbaim. Yeah. A little more than 9 to 5, so they would be there from the earliest, from Nate's, from when you could bring the morning sacrifice, and Tamin Shal Ben Arbaim until the late evening, the late afternoon. Sorry, around whatever Shkias Tzeis. Now Uve Shabbos V'Yamim Tovim. What happened on Shabbos and Yom Tif? Yoshvin Bechel. Chel was another part of the Beis Hamikdash. What do they call it? The rampart, the rampart. The Chel, yeah, the Chel was another part of the Beis Hamikdash, a much more outer part. Now on Shabbos they would sit there. So why would they sit there? So I think there's different opinions. So one opinion Rashi says is because so many people were there Shabbos and Yom Tov, it was they needed more space. However, his preferable opinion is why they sat there is because it shouldn't look like they're ruling laws on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So therefore, they sort of changed locations, and that answer that is his preferred answer. Fine. So now, nishla she'ela b'fneim, they would ask them a question. Im shamu amr. If they knew, they would tell them the im lav, and if they didn't know the answer, omdim leminyan. They would go take a vote. So rabba amatamim timu. If most people held the thing was tameh, then it's tameh. Rabba amatarin taru. If they didn't know the answer, you have 71 people. Go take a vote. And therefore, there was very little room for machlokas. Any dispute that came up, you went to your local court, or the nearest court, or up to Yerushalayim. So, where would there be a dispute? Everything. I guess if you didn't ask the court, then maybe you okay. Yeah. Right. So me. Mm-hmm. You're saying in like in the judicial system.
Yeah.
Right.
Go from lower court
to higher court. So you heard it here first, yeah. So Misharabu Talmidei Shammai v'Hillel. So we know Shammai and Hillel. So once they had so many students, so then if you ever wants Daf Yomi to have 45 people, what's going to happen? Too many people come to the shir. That's great. The problem was like this: they had many students. That's fine. Mishnah Pirkei Avos says you should have many students. Right? However, shelo shimshu kol tzorkan. They weren't mishamish their rebbeim in a proper way. Mishamish means they served them. Serve does not mean they brought them their clothing and their breakfast and their omelets. It means they didn't stay with them long enough to fully understand how they would answer halakhic rulings. So they didn't get enough practice to learn how to answer halakhic rulings, and therefore, Rabbi Machlokas B'Yisrael, all the different opinions happened from in the Jewish people. Of all these students who then they didn't have a clarity, which this for sure happens nowadays. Everyone has their own opinion of what their Rebbe said, and he's not alive anymore to clarify, right? So, right, yeah. The Nasis Torah, what happened to the Torah? It became like two Torahs. Which, by the way, is the reason why there's a prohibition called Losis Go to do, that you shouldn't break off of things. Because it looks like two Torahs, essentially same language. And then what happened? Misham Kosim V'Sholchan. From there they wrote and they sent out B'chol Makomos. They sent out to all the places. Once they had more machlokas than they ever expected, they sent out to all the locales the following: Kol Mishu Chacham. It's interesting. Looking for leaders, yeah. Whoever is knowledgeable. First prerequisite. V'Shafel Birach. Two kinds of humility. I'm not sure what the difference is. Two kinds of humility. He's a humble person, a softer person. That's two. And the third thing is, Vidas Habrios Noche Himenu. He has to be something that the people he's pleasant with the people. They enjoy his company. You could be knowledgeable and you could be humble. but if people give a bad taste in your mouth from you, then you can't be a leader. So the Chazan, before he davens Musaf on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, he says a private prayer. In there, it talks about he's hoping that he's somebody who's me'urav in mabrios with the people. Right. Yeah. So it's very important. So they sent that letter. If you follow these 3 qualifications, please be a judge in your city. Yehedayin be'iro. Now, once you were a judge in your city, from there, now it's like a little bit, lahavdil, so to speak, like the minor leagues and the major leagues. Not that it's the same equivalent, but from there, misham malos laharabais, you can go up to the Temple Mount, misham lahazara, and then you can go up to be a judge on the court by the Azara, and from there you can be upgraded to the Lichkas Agazis. So now, and off of this, shalchu mitams, they sent over from there, from Eretz Yisrael, I guess. They sent from Eretz Yisrael. Ezu ben Olam Haba, who's someone who's literally it means a son of Olam Haba, but it means someone who's living a life like an Olam Haba person is supposed to live. Anvasan, someone who is humble. Vishafel berach, another form of humility, a lowly, a softer person. So shayif oil, shayif nafik. He walks in, he bows. He leaves, he bows. Right? Vigaris ba'araisa, and he's consistently learning Torah. Not whenever he's in the mood, not once in a while, consistently. Yeah, another plug for Daf Yomi. Yeah. So, and after all that, below magzik tibusal nafshe. I'm such a good guy. I've been on 15 years Daf Yomi already. No. So Yavu Beit Rabbanan Einan. The rabbis put their eyes on who? Bir Rav Ula Bar Abba. They felt Rav Ula Bar Abba was someone who was fitting these categories, and therefore they wanted him to be a leader, wanted him to be a judge.